I'm Mel.
I'm Sarah.
And I'm Beck. And this is We Are Woman.
Welcome back to We Are Woman, a space where we explore who we are beneath the conditioning, the performance, and the roles we've learned to play. Today, we're exploring something every woman feels but rarely speaks about honestly: the dance between authenticity and belonging. This episode is an invitation to look at how we shape ourselves to be accepted and what it takes to come home to who we really are, especially in relationship with others. We can't be authentic alone. We discover ourselves through each other, and belonging is not about fitting in. Now, a question that I want to start with is, when you think about the word authenticity, what does it actually mean to you?
Hmm. Yeah, I think that is a really important place for us to start, is to really inquire into what does authenticity really mean, or what does it mean to us, and how do we define it, I guess. Um, yeah, for me, what comes up is being myself and feeling comfortable in that. So that really comes through for me first. Like it's like feeling really comfortable to be myself. And funnily enough, authenticity for me does happen in the face of others. Like it's quite easy for me to be myself in a forest by myself because there's no one else around. It's like, well, what is there to quote unquote be ashamed of or to feel anything about in relationship to anyone else, right? It's pretty easy. Um, so yeah, authenticity to me means being able to be myself with a level of comfort, with a level of ease, with a level of graciousness, especially and particularly in relationship to other people, and maybe especially also in certain environments. And then maybe what comes up is family environments, but also work environments. That I feel comfortable to speak my needs, to say my yeses and nos in a really clear and direct way, in a kind way as well, where I feel I can be in the space with others and not needing to shrink, kind of thing. So being in this really healthy place of I'm myself and I'm allowing others to be themselves, and in that place we're connecting. Yeah, that's what sort of comes up for me now. And I'm really curious to hear back also for you what it means to you or how you see that.
Yeah, I really love that. I love the idea of authenticity showing up in the face of others. And what came up for me there is just that I feel like I can welcome all parts of me as well. So authenticity comes from relationship, but it also comes from my relationship with myself, in my relationship with others as well, if that makes sense. So for me, it is, I feel a sense of freedom when I'm in authenticity, that all the funny little parts of me are welcome, the cheeky side of me, the serious side of me, and I'm feeling a freedom to allow them as opposed to I'm watching and witnessing them. So I'm just really present when I'm authentic.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, I think for me, it's kind of a combination of what you guys both just spoke to. Um, I love, Beck, that you mentioned that you feel like that it's the relationship with yourself that you can welcome parts of yourself, and also similarly to Sarah, that it is in the face of others. I think authenticity for me has been this slow reclamation of who I am in my marriage and my friendships and motherhood, and just letting myself be seen in that. And I think that's where this ties beautifully into authenticity and belonging, and that they are part of the same thing.
I think as well, what's been really interesting is authenticity feels like it's almost a new buzzword. Everyone wants to talk about authenticity, but
Mm,
I think even before that, there's a part of us that even needs to discover it. Like what you're describing, Mel, really understanding who am I in this relationship? Who am I in this relationship? Who am
yeah.
I when I'm on my own? So, authenticity, I think we're having these conversations about being more authentic, and we've created so many belonging strategies, particularly I think as women, because we are typically the nurturer. Typically, we're holding it all together emotionally, or we need to step into our masculine power to be present in the boardrooms or any of these sorts of things. So I feel like the conversation around authenticity, it's not just actually defining what authenticity is, but there's also a discovery for all of us around what is our authenticity.
Yeah, I love that you speak to that because what's coming up for me as yeah, you were exploring that is there's also, yeah, this shape shifting of who we are. So I think authenticity can start at that point where, yes, who are we in this particular relationship or who are we in, friendships or motherhood or at work? But then really inquiring, is that who I am? Or is that the role I felt like I've had to play in that relationship? As opposed to if that is the deeper sense of who I actually am. And I think that's where this exploration becomes quite deep and meaningful and less of, yeah, that buzzword of being authentic and more about just a real relationship with yourself and understanding how you behave in certain in contexts and what those belonging strategies as you call them, Beck, are, what they are and where they show up.
Mm.
Mm. Yeah, I feel the more we talk about this, the more I really see the depth of what we're really exploring here, isn't it? Because innately within us is a need to belong. Like innately, as we come into this world as fragile babies, we need to belong to our tribe, to our parents, to our caregivers in order to survive. Like that is an innate need within all of us. The level of honesty and therefore authenticity in which we were held in our early years of development and in our early years of environment, I think shape shifts our level, the level of how honest or how authentic we can be in also our need and desire for belonging. So
Yep.
if we have a healthy upbringing where our personal needs and desires were really honored and celebrated, as well as our needs and desires for connection and belonging, and there was enough spaciousness and that was celebrated, including like exploring our own creativity, our own self, our own maybe qualities within ourselves that we really wanted to learn and develop, whether that was being adventurous or being really I don't know, sportsy, all these different kind of qualities. And if there was space in the home environment or the environment we grew up in or the community to really explore ourselves in a variety of ways, then that need sort of also satisfied on some level. Like we are exploring ourselves in a variety of ways, and at the same time, we're really held in a nurturing containing of belonging within and a safe container. And where I feel either the really extreme desire within us for authenticity, if it really becomes a strong part of us that feels like it's really been rejected for a
Mm.
while, then there has been some sort of a bigger either trauma or just a more cultural development. Like I know for myself, being born and raised in the Netherlands, there's a lot of focus on structure, on the environment. The environment is quite masculine in a certain way. There's a lot of focus on performance and output and things like that, which is not a bad thing at all. It's just that the way the culture is kind of designed and all of that is kind of set up. There's also opportunity in part for creativity, and there's a lot of freedom in the culture. But for me, also, for example, working in the professional modeling industry since the age of 14, I feel like that feminine side of me had been suppressed. So now I'm
Mm.
really in this phase of really reclaiming that through which you can say my authenticity, right? And then maybe for other people it's something else, right? I'm just using my own example here to explain, I guess, what I see as a very nuanced dance between us and our inner landscape, as well as our environment and our outer landscape, including like the systems and structures that we sit and operate in, as well as culture and mindset and belief systems. And we are always being shape shifted by our environment. I think it's naive to think that this question or this quest that I know I have been on for a while, which is who am I outside of anything else kind of thing. But I don't think we
Yep.
can define that in that way. I don't think I am something separate from anything else. Like I'm fundamentally a part of the whole. And in that, I'm always on some level responding to my environment and responding to that. I think what we're exploring here is to what degree am I feeling also in alignment with myself as well as with my environment. And there's almost like this healthy balance and dance between my own personal power and needs and sovereignty, as well as my need and desire for belonging. And what I've seen with also the people that I've worked with is that sometimes if a big rupture has occurred in either the belonging need or in the authenticity need, both are needs of us. There's often shame. I find is like the bridge between, or is sort of the emotion that doesn't allow one or the other is what I have noticed. Because shame is also this belief like I can't, if this part of me was to be seen by others and not welcomed, I need to hide that in some way. So that tells me there's an aspect of the self in someone that then needs to be hidden in order to belong. And I think that's where we then are not authentic, yeah, or not fully able to be ourselves. So that's why I love what you said back around like freedom, because it's this, can I be free and myself as well as be with others in the space of that? And if we have that and our culture allows it, because culture matters in that, like culture is a massive driving force in terms of are we able to do that actually, then in my opinion, because if I can do that by myself, but if my culture is not allowing that, I have a problem. Like that's just true because I'm operating within a culture, right? And then I might need to find another culture, we can move across the whole world to do that, which I've done as well. Who are great. I just think I think when we explore these topics, I guess my main point is I think we need to look at developmental stages and phases where there's any rupture or some this misalignment has occurred, where there's repair that's maybe needed, and then to what degree that can actually be lived in the environment and actually can be integrated, so to speak, into the environment, because we are also in relationship to our environment. And so it's so nuanced, isn't it? I guess that's what I'm just discovering through this conversation myself as well. It's like just so much nuance and always it's ever changing. It's this ever changing dynamic, really.
Yeah, like as a summary of what you said, and just so that I'm really clear, I think what you're saying is that we are constantly shape shifting to meet our environment and to meet the people that we're with. But authenticity is to what degree do we allow ourselves into that space as that shapeshifter. So we're moving to meet where we're at, but we're also allowing all of those parts of us, even those parts of us that we sometimes feel like we're just about tolerating, or we've gone on this sort of journey to allow to open up. And like you said, if we're in a space that doesn't allow that, then sometimes it's a reminder of looking for other spaces. Or yeah, as you said, you've traveled halfway around the world to do that as well. I noticed this from a professional perspective as well, that having been a psychotherapist and working in organizations and working with leaders, that I sometimes feel this sort of push-pull around having to be the professional, to maintain professional boundaries, to somewhat be an expert in the room, and also realizing that I'm a human and softening my edges to meet the people that I'm working with where they're at. And what I've really noticed is that the more I do that, the more I invite in that really human part of me, the emotions, the edges, the parts of me that I've been exploring myself, the better outcome, the better engagement I have with my client, but also the better outcomes we both have as a result of the work we do together, engaging human to human as well.
I love that. And that's authenticity, right? You being authentic. We are all human and meeting each other at that point.
Mm.
Yeah. I think this is where Brene Brown maybe comes in with the power of vulnerability, and particularly in leadership environments, and how so
Mm.
powerful that is to, yeah, I guess to be authentic on some level, to show our more vulnerable selves, our more human selves, in a way that still feels contained. Like I feel like that's maybe what you're saying back, or like that at least that's what how it resonates within me of like, yeah, it's this balance and this dance and this sensing into to what degree am I, yeah, being myself and authentic and expressing myself, but I'm also healthily, particularly in more professional environments, containing that energy as well. Like I'm not with my friends having a drink in the bar. Not that I really have
Mm.
drinks in the bar, but anyway, like let's say, right? So there is a difference in the environment, and I guess that's what we're meaning with how authenticity and belonging is almost this fine line. It's that those two words together is this dance that we're exploring, right? It's this dance between here is myself in honesty, here are my parts, as well as really recognizing what is appropriate in the space and what can other people also hold. And I know I love that so much also in my work with my clients, because I do have this sense within myself of this balancing of like, yeah, I sometimes purposefully expose myself to my clients to invite in more of that honesty and that humanness and that relatability, as well as sometimes I hold that back because I know it's not going to be received maybe as well in the space, and or it might actually create rupture in the relationship because maybe the trust isn't yet fully there with the client, or maybe the level of understanding to that degree. And then there is health in holding parts back as well, without sort of this feeling of I'm hiding something or I'm shaming something, but just a healthy sensing of, yeah, some part of me I hold back here because it's not appropriate in this environment, right? And maybe that's what we're exploring. I guess that's my next question is, what's the difference, or how can we recognize the difference within ourselves? What is a healthy containment of our energy and a healthy holding back versus what is really more of a hiding quality within us, like where are we hiding
Mm.
parts of ourselves because we don't feel comfortable with showing them, right? I think that's something different than I don't feel comfortable showing certain parts of myself versus I'm attuning to the space that I'm in and I'm responding and sending to what's appropriate in my environment. And how do we know the difference?
Mm.
Yeah, I love that you speak to that, because I think the first step on my quote unquote authenticity journey, it has been something that, yeah, I have engaged in, but the sense was the first thing I wanted to work on was just to drop the perfection, because my mask to be perfect in every situation was that was my lack of authenticity. It was stopping me from really feeling into what the situation was or how I felt in relationship with something or someone or even myself. Man, I could even be inauthentic to myself, just in terms of trying to be perfect. And that was, I suppose, my first. I'll use the word mask because I can't think of a better word, but that was my first mask I needed to drop in order for me to be authentic. And I feel like while we speak to containment of some things don't always have to be outwardly expressed, I just knew that sort of on the reverse side of that, my first thing I needed to do was drop the perfection. And in that, parts of me that needed to come through were the messy parts, or the fact that I even had needs. That was my step. That was my first thing, was, yeah, dropping the perfection and allowing those messy parts to come forward. And I still work on that.
Yeah, I feel like those are pretty common, aren't they? Like the messy part, I can definitely resonate with that one. The For me, control was a big part as well, like actually just letting go of control and just flowing with the day a bit more. Yeah.
Mm.
And which I guess is another form of perfectionism, right? Like it's just another way
Yeah.
of putting it, really.
Yeah.
And then yeah, like I think what did you, I'm not sure what word you use, but you sort of like the fear of failure or like
Yeah.
something might
100%.
discover that I actually know shit.
Yeah, I don't have my stuff together.
Right, this is all pretty common. Like so pretty much everyone that I work with comes with the same with these same things, which is fascinating, right? So
Mm,
there's certain patterns I think we can recognize either within ourselves and with others that are really quite similar, even though they might manifest slightly differently. But these needs that we this need for belonging can be so strong that
mm.
we do, yeah, hide parts of ourselves as a way to compensate for that, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it also, um, yeah, brings us back to the point where we are also saying that a lot of this is why authenticity and belonging are not separate because it is about in relationship to yourself and others, and then what we do, yeah, in that. So I think it's a really good, yeah, also a good example of how that authenticity and belonging plays out and why we do it, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
For me, it's the discovery before that as well. Some of the practices that we do with breath work and some of my somatic practices have really helped me to discover what those parts are as well. So
Mm,
the contraction I get from trying to run this pattern of perfectionism, I hadn't noticed the contraction until I stopped and used these practices and really felt into my body. And that created that allowing to notice that I wasn't in my space of authenticity. And so I guess you mentioned Brene Brown earlier, Sarah, and it makes me think we've been saying authenticity and belonging are not opposites. I wonder if it is that sort of fitting in that becomes the opposite, and actually
mm,
authenticity and belonging are almost more like stages. First, we need to feel like we belong. That's our survival instinct. We're mammals, right? We're pack animals. But then we become authentic as part of that evolution once we've found that sense of belonging.
Oh, I love
mm.
that, Beck. Yeah, like it's like what you're saying, what I'm
Same.
hearing is like we first need to really feel quite fulfilled almost in our need for belonging in order to really feel safe enough within
Mm,
ourselves to actually be authentic, as
mm,
opposed to the opposite of authentic in this way is more like that fitting in. Yeah, like all of the ways that we shape shift in order to fit in. Um, yeah, I love that. I love that differentiation because I think that's very valid. Is like, yeah, the real need and desire for belonging actually needs to be there first before we can really drop into our authenticity more fully. Yeah, I agree with that.
I think the idea around the belonging is, as I said, these processes, these practices, breath work especially, but certainly some of my other practices have helped me recognize, oh, I'm running this pattern of perfectionism to try and fit in, to try and get validation from others. But when I belong, I'm not requiring that validation anyway. So the sense of belonging is actually a really important part of me dropping that pattern of perfectionism in the first place.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
was just thinking that too, Beck. I feel like almost there's a transfer of safety from, and I know I speak from my point of view when I say this, but what came up was there's a transfer of the safety and approval from others and bringing it back to yourself and just being in yourself and the safety coming from you now and that approval coming from yourself and it's not based on the external.
Hmm.
That's very much, yeah, from my lens, but that's how I experience that.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah. I often say in as breath work or even in the coaching and inquiry work that I do is like we're really learning in that process. We're really learning to come more home to ourselves,
Mm,
and it is that belonging, right? So really, we're really learning to belong to all of the parts of ourselves again, first and foremost, and then that will ripple out into else have we rejected within ourselves?
mm,
Have we needed maybe to reject and or we've just interpreted it as such? Maybe we didn't
mm,
actually need to reject it, but that was just our interpretation of it, right? Like our interpretation of what something happened in the environment and we interpret that something about us or the way we did something or whatever it may be. When we can really start to reclaim those spaces in ourselves. And I found breathwork really being such a powerful way of doing it because it's so somatic. Because I found for myself that I could sort of cognitively understand, yeah, I could understand, or it could be feminine or this, so that I could understand those concepts. Or yeah, I can be in my body, like I can understand it, but to really drop into the body in such a deep way and really start to
Mm.
reclaim these parts from the bottom up, so from a body-based approach, does feel quite different for me. It does feel like this real homecoming and this real belonging. And then in the belonging of that, I love this. Like it's like the authenticity just emerges and naturally out of that, right? Like the authentic expression that was maybe once suppressed or hidden away or whatever we did with that, the authentic expression then comes forward. And um I'm just thinking of an example of that within myself recently, which was yeah, maybe my messy part. I still feel I think I'm still integrating that piece. Like I'm still working on that. That this messy part, which is actually just me not being so in control, and I call that then messy. But maybe it's just the feminine flow of life, and it's actually just
Mm.
the brilliance of the river flowing more in a kind of a free flowing way as opposed to more of this rigid controlling. And it might then seem to a part of me like, oh, that's really messy, but is it really messy? Maybe not, right? I guess I'm just inquiring about this openly right now. um but the authentic, what comes up is the authentic quality. So the authenticity, the authentic quality can come through and be rediscovered through this feeling of safety and belonging to that
Mm.
part within us again. And then I love that the breath can bring that in such a beautiful and deep way in the body. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd love to share one of my first and most powerful journeys. And I think it beautifully links back to what we're speaking here to and what you were mentioning, Sarah, about, yeah, feeling those parts of yourself in your body. And through breath work, I was in a beautiful, safe container up in Byron Bay, and I had a breath journey where anger came up. And I remember throughout the journey, or just thinking, oh my gosh, I get angry? Like, what? And that really made me realize how I had exiled that part, or shamed that part, or pushed it away because, the story that I run here is that I have to be perfect and that emotions and needs are messy and probably a burden. So that stuff had been pushed down. So when I started to feel anger within my body, it wasn't even requiring the mind. Um, yeah, through FBR breathwork, it was what was coming up was, yeah, my blood was boiling, my hands were shaking, I had like my hands were actually in the shape of a fist, and I was roaring. And while it sounds loud, and it was, and very physical, it was beautiful to find that part of myself and be able to. I'm not saying the reclamation happened in the moment in the breath journey. It was a process after that of really then starting to realize on a day-to-day basis, even in micro moments, where, oh, I'm angry here, or I'm feeling anger. And yeah, I think to have felt that on a body point of view has been really so powerful in integrating that part back to myself, and then being able to be authentic and go, hey, yeah, I get angry, or I'm angry right now, and that's okay, and not shaming that part, and to experience, yeah, what those parts feel like on a body level that we may have shamed. And breathwork has been a really powerful tool in making me realize probably how much I do edit myself in situations, and anger was a big one. So yeah, I can now be angry, and that's pretty authentic and pretty useful in situations, Um, yeah, while we don't need to go into what anger is right now, setting boundaries and being able to voice my needs and just going, yeah, this is actually how I feel, and that doesn't feel good to me, or that's not in alignment. And that's authenticity, right?
Mm. It's so interesting. And like, maybe to wrap up this part of the conversation, I think that's something so many women and so many of our listeners, I think we're taught, particularly as women, to be emotionally predictable, right? To not have these real high highs or these real low lows, not to be too intense, to be the real nurturing matriarch, and to wear that hat or to play that role. And I think what you're saying is through breath work, sometimes we can reconcile things in our mind, but our body knows when we're not being true to ourselves.
Yes.
And in beautiful modalities like FBR breath work,
Mm.
there's nowhere for that to hide, right? It comes to the surface. And I really love that you had that experience and you had it so early on in your breathwork experience as well. I look forward to letting my anger roar as well.
You should do it, Beck. It's so much fun.
Yeah, I love that we've been exploring like how we can really reclaim these real deeper emotions like anger, rage, or shame through ourselves again, through really by this exploration of breath work, right? All three of us are really just, we've really come to this modality as a way that we've seen for ourselves. And I have also personally really seen with my clients, it really helps to come into our bodies more fully and to really feel at home in our bodies and in that sense really belong to all of these different parts of ourselves, whether that's the anger, the shame, the rage, the joy, the messiness, the vibrancy, the aliveness, sexuality, all these different parts of ourselves we can start to then really reclaim. And I feel like it might be useful to touch on a few examples that I've seen in both myself and also in the people that I've worked with in terms of some signs, I guess, or just some cues, what I've noticed in myself and also have heard and seen in other people that can really give us an indicator of we've really reclaimed this part in ourselves, or we really feel like this part is really more welcome. Yeah. And what I've noticed is a warmth. There's for me, and also what I've really heard in clients is there's a general sense of warmth in the body. Could be through like a relaxation. So there's more spaciousness often. The breath moves often a bit more slower and deeper and wider. So there's this sense of spaciousness that could be in the whole body or particular areas of the body. Yeah, there's an openness, a spaciousness, less contraction, less control or contraction or restriction. So really the restriction can soften away. And if there was a tightening in the chest before, there's a real more fuller spaciousness in the breath in the chest, for example, but also the fascia can really soften. So that's more like on the skin. You can really feel like the skin soften. One really interesting thing that I've noticed in myself is my skin is really soft and my hair is softer since I've been doing this work, which is fascinating. Then a very common one that I've seen particularly in a lot of women is the unclenching of the jaw, the dropping of the shoulders, and a relaxation in the hip area. And I feel that really has to do with, particularly for women, again, the reclamation of our sexuality and that being really safe and welcome. And it creates a lot of vibrancy within us. Then the other piece is really a softening and a relaxation around the muscles around the eyes or the forehead or the mouth. So the real relaxation in the face, you can kind of see it in someone that has more of a relaxed and open facial expression. The eyes tend to be more bright. Yeah, it tends to be more sparkling. I guess I'm just naming this because these are some cues that we can really recognize that someone is more safe and at home in themselves. You can see it through the body. The body speaks this language. Often the walking is a bit more graceful. Yeah, like all the movements are kind of become more graceful is what I've noticed. But there's a power in it as well, right? It's not just a floppy kind of. There's a softness, and yet there's a containment and a strength and a power as well. And that's just some cues that I've seen in both myself and other people that I can really start to see the body starts to reclaim itself. And also what I found, which is very fascinating, is the process of what belonging actually feels like in the body and of coming home to ourselves starts to almost, once we know how to do it through the breath, it becomes easier and easier. And the process goes kind of faster in a certain way because we recognize how it feels to really belong to ourselves in this sense. And so that's just a really beautiful encouragement to once you know you reclaimed something in yourself and you can feel that difference, it becomes easier with the next thing. And then the next thing is as we sort of unpack the layers.
I love that.
Yeah, these are just some examples that come up for me, Mel. Maybe you've got some things to add there.
Yeah, I would love to add, I don't think you mentioned it, but I would love to add one of my favorite facilitations to do on my clients is the neck. I feel like the neck is
Mm.
a big one too. I totally hear you on, the jaw dropping, the shoulders dropping, but I think the neck for my women clients in particular that come in, they're just I suppose they just seem to be holding so much in there, and that's why one of my favorite facilitations, and I know it activates the parasympathetic system, and there's a lot of science behind we do what we do, but I also just love when I put I suppose it's like my warm hand under the neck and I'm like, hey, I can hold this for you. And then you just feel that drop. And it's
Mm.
like you are safe here to be yourself and whatever happens, happens. And like this is okay. All is welcome. Yeah, I just wanted to add that. The neck facilitations, oh, I love them. I love doing them for my breathers, but I also love receiving them too. And I think the neck, I think it's a good indicator as well to are you tensing it or is it sore? So many of my women clients come in and they've got this sore, tight neck, and it's just a beautiful, soft hand under it, a little bit of a turn. And it's like, yes, I can be myself. I belong here and everything is welcome.
Just talking about all of these little noticings around when we're coming more into our authenticity. I had this realization about a week ago around a mask that I wear or a role that I've been playing for so long. And I've been really holding on to this role for the sake of others. And this recognition that I really just no longer have it in me to wear this mask or play this role anymore. And so this recognition
Yes,
came up
Beck.
for me. And I'm not kidding you. At least three people this week have told me, you look different. Why do you look different?
I
Not
love
sure,
that.
but there's something about you that's different. I've had a client tell me, I've had a friend that saw me the week before that knows I definitely couldn't look very different in that week. Yeah, just really interesting the amount of observation. Yeah, the way other people observe you when you're stepping into your authenticity. So, yeah, I just really love this
Mm.
conversation.
Yeah, there's a lightness we can start to see, isn't it? Like there's a
Mm,
lightness
mm,
in the eyes or the body or the posture. And yeah, it we might actually go into another episode. It might be for another episode to really go into the more details of FBR breathwork and how we recognize how certain emotional patterns or thought patterns or behavioral patterns are often linked to certain parts of the body. And we
definitely.
can really unpack that so that it gives you, as a listener, a really good sort of map that you can use to really explore. And it's always just a map, so it's not the territory. And what that means is that your body will always know the wisdom and the territory, but there is commonalities that we tend to see between certain breathing patterns and certain emotional patterns and how that's and behavioral patterns and thinking patterns, and that's all linked to one another, and therefore also relationship patterns. And maybe that's like a beautiful segue into this next piece, which is as we really start to work on ourselves, it often is reflected in the relationships that we surround ourselves with or that we have with other people. So I find the work on myself as it deepens and it continues, I have different relationships with the same people in my life, and or I have just different relationships with different people. Like it's like different people come into my life depending on where I'm at in my life and the type of work I've done on myself. And I find that just so interesting because that is like my work on myself is directly reflected into my the quality of my relationship, but also the type of people
Mm.
that are drawn to me. Yeah.
I feel like this is a little shout out to your coaching, but something I've really noticed as I've really focused on coming back to my authenticity is this idea of allowing myself to need others and to be held by others. And I've noticed that in the coaching I do and I have done with you, Sarah, is just the allowing myself to need that support to be held by you. And the breath work has been such a route into allowing me, like you said, Mel, someone to hold your neck and to just sort of witness that relaxing into that person's hand. And as I do that, as you said, Sarah, it's really changed the way people are interacting with me. Even if they don't know I'm doing the work, I'll have people ring me up out of the blue and say, "Are you okay? Just checking in. Are you okay? Things feel different, even though we're not in, maybe even in the same state." So I love the way that it impacts really beautifully on everyone and everything else, because it's all energy, right?
Yeah, it is all energy, and we like it's like this, all these cells are vibrating in a certain frequency, and if we change the frequency of the cells vibrating in our own body, which breathwork, this is actually scientifically proven, directly does, it's really beautiful to this constantly on ourselves, on our own patterns, and in our own inner landscapes, and um all the parts of ourselves, and we do the inner work, yeah, the inner work or the self work. And also this real important piece around, we are also dependent fundamentally on environment and on the people around us. And in that way, we can start to recognize this quality of interdependence. And I feel like it's almost a different way of saying what we spoke to earlier, which is there is the need for independence, which is also this need for authenticity and honesty and being able to be ourselves, and freedom and autonomy and those kind of qualities. And then there's also this deep drive and desire for belonging and connection and intimacy. And so the real quest is, how do we really authentically belong? And it takes like authentically belong in the spaces that we're in, and it actually takes the courage back that you spoke to. And I can so resonate with that, because that's been very much a part of my own journey as well, to need others and to be like, yeah, I need you in this, but not in a way where I can't also hold myself, right? Like I'm not collapsing into the other or collapsing into them fully needing to hold me. I'm holding myself, but I'm also allowing myself to be held. So this is like this piece of holding thing, and it speaks for me to this different way of describing of authenticity and belonging, which for me is also this, when we really can hone that more fully. And I think it's always a dance, so it's always a continuous journey of discovering our independence and our dependence, and that really is the dance of interdependence, if you will, like between us and in our environment.
I think it's really powerful that we're bringing this in, because I know, in the past, I thought I was independent, and I wouldn't have probably understood that it was probably independent in a not so useful way. And if someone had said to me, "Oh, you need others," or, mention the word dependence, there'd be a real aversion in my system, in my mind, in my body. Ugh, I don't need anybody. And I've since realized there is a difference between, if we go to the independent side, where well, I think I'm probably transitioning out of more so than the dependent side. And I know it's a constant dance, so we're always moving in and out of these things. But just to recognize that, if I could speak from my experience, my independence was more about putting walls up than healthy boundaries, or an avoidance, and like I
Mm.
don't need you and I don't need anything, rather than it's okay to need people, but as you said, Sarah, just not to collapse into that, or not to, which I probably had done in the past, shrink myself, or need to be chosen. This is what played out specifically for me. And then just, yeah, being able to get into that more useful, authentic way of living, where it's more, yeah, more just coming from wholeness
Mm.
and authenticity, and more like I know we've spoken about this before, but more like just like a stand next to someone or stand with me energy, rather than a "I don't need you," or a "oh, hold me quick." Like there's, yeah, it's just more of a wholeness, and an authenticity. Like this is me as I am whole, and I'm okay with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a fine balance. And again, I think this has to do with developmental stages as well as our attachment
Mm.
pattern and our upbringing. So if we were raised in a more secure, attached environment, this more healthy understanding or belief or just deep rooted belief in our system or in our being understands that we need both ourselves and each other. Like we need to be somewhat independent, and also we need others as well. And what I see, maybe the more anxious attachment style leans more towards that being overly dependent upon others, and then more that avoidant attachment style, which is actually what I've seen in my work, and also what I've kind of come to the conclusion to is that real strong independence is almost our last resource, or how to say, is almost our last attempt to find safety, which is that real which is real avoidance, more avoidant attachment style. So that real strong, more leaning towards independence. I found what I've seen in both myself and in the people I've worked with is that is almost our last resource to find safety, and that the anxious attachment style is actually somewhat closer to safety on some level, even though they look more anxious. So there's these funny paradoxes I find in that. But yeah, I can see a really strong correlation between our attachment style, like the way we brought up the safety in the environment that we had, that sense of belonging, as well as our ability to express ourselves, to then this in our romantic relationships in particular is where this often comes up, right? Is where our need for dependence as well as independence, and then this real quality of interdependence, and how that can merge and show up, and how that is also related to authenticity and belonging. And really, we're just exploring the same topic through different words and lenses, really.
Something I really love about the style of breath work we do is I think it really lends itself to, if, for example, someone like myself who really did grow up in probably a more disorganized attachment, being in circle has allowed me to really create more of an understanding of those different, more healthy attachment styles through the process of witnessing and being held by others and noticing what's going on for this person and seeing the safety in that and allowing myself. So there's a really beautiful acknowledgement of the attachment styles and how they link in with our sense of belonging and authenticity, and also the beautiful modalities we use, how they can link in with creating that attachment if we didn't have it to begin with.
Yeah, I found that when I came to breathwork, these concepts around attachment styles and dependence and interdependence and all these kind of concepts that I understood on a cognitive level really were able to again be more embodied in my body. And I felt like I could really revisit old attachment wounds in a really safe way to explore some old attachment. This was the thing. Like I also feel some of us, or at least for myself, like I didn't even know how much of my attachment patterns were really driving my choices in life, or were really driving the quality of my relationships or the way I was interacting. I wasn't even really aware of it until I started really exploring that through my own body and then also with my clients, even though I had the concepts of it. And I think that's a really fascinating thing. And I think it's a really big difference between practitioners that really walk this path, or people that really walk this path of exploration, versus maybe people that more read it out of the books. It's just different. Like if you really walk this path, you really start to see how deeply embedded these patterns really are, and these wounds really are. And I find the best practitioners, both in what I've seen in our school, as well as that the best practitioners are the ones that have really gone deeply within themselves and discovered these different parts of themselves, these different wounds, and then they can help and support and guide others in doing the same to find more, wholeness in themselves. As you were speaking to Mel, I really find it and coming back to that wholeness, and then from that wholeness we can start to relate, as opposed to from fragmentation or separateness.
Yeah, I think this speaks so much to, again, just that yeah, I suppose it's the belonging and being in relationship, because I think I love that you spoke to, as FBR practitioners, we regularly engage in the practice ourselves. So therefore we have walked this path. And then I know that when I'm facilitating clients, I can learn so much through their experience as well as my own. And I can see that. And then on top of that, once you put, women in a circle, I mean, women and men, but just specifically for this discussion, you put women in a circle and we see everyone breathing, and it it can take, I think it's that idea of when one person can be authentic and speak openly to something that's going on, it allows that to wake up in you, or you can reflect back and think, oh, yeah, I think I've noticed that in me. It's like that whole idea also, I think, while healing happens in a tribe, I love that because we see other women in circle, even as facilitators ourselves, they speak to what's coming up from them. It's safe to speak, and you can see the ripple that that has both on the women in the circle and then also as us. And I think it really brings us back to yeah, that belonging and that relationship with each other and how powerful that is. And then also why it's the yeah, authenticity and belonging sit in amongst all of this together.
I think that's such an important point that you're raising, Mel. That yeah, there's the inner work and the self work, which we might do one-on-one space with a practitioner or
Mm,
by ourselves, which is super valuable and important. But then also really so important to do this work in circle. And I love that that's such a big component of the way we teach as well in our school is that we train, a lot of our trainings are in circle, the breath work is other people and in circle because yeah, it really speaks to this aspect, Mel, of really we really heal in relationship. Most of our wounds are created in relationship. And so where do we heal them? Well, in relationship. And it's this funny thing I think Brene Brown says as well around this person that came up to her apparently or whatever that said, yeah, I'm going to heal my shame, but I'm just going to kind of like do it by myself. And it's just this funny thing because you can't do it by yourself. You need to do that in relationship. Like it's born in relationship. And so it needs to heal in relationship. And I think this is where traditional therapy, even though I love, traditional therapy in many ways, and it's got many good aspects and it's got a lot to teach us, but it is missing for me that really important point around the really more ancient ancestral practice tribal practice of sitting in circle in
mm,
spaces with other people, which I feel really honors and understands that aspect of we need to heal in the face of each other. We need each other to mirror parts of ourselves back to one another. We need those mirrors, and in those mirrors, we actually heal. Without those mirrors, we might not even know certain pieces or parts exist, right? And or
mm,
we need to feel like we are safe in that container, and once it's healed and held in that container, then it can really heal. So this is where I see the real beauty and recognition of having more trainings and more healing spaces in
mm,
circle, and also really seeing, and I guess that's what we're creating here on in a virtual way as well, right? Like we're sitting here with three women on a podcast, and but really how can we come together as women as that we are the woman and we are walking each other home as a group and as a community, and recognizing that as practitioners, as we all three are practitioners, and I teach many containers retreats, and I'm as much a part of that mirroring process as everyone else. Like we're all sitting in the space, we're all sitting with each other, and in that we all get to learn and
mm,
experience, right? And there is a wisdom also in having maybe more elders in the space, and having different age groups in the space. Like there's just as much as we can create that, there's so much power in that because that's how we really get to learn through different storylines. And I feel the ancient practice of sitting in circle really honors and gets that. It really gets the essence of that. And if there is rupture in the circle or individually between two people, the power of actually bringing it back into circle and
mm.
creating repair through circle and creating repair through the system of the circle. In my opinion, when someone understands that, they're ready to hold that space because they understand the wider concept of that sort of the healing through that lens.
Yeah, I think the wisdom that you speak to in terms of, the ancient and ancestral practice of sitting in circle, and also we speak specifically to FBR breathwork. What could be more ancient and wise than simply going back to the body and the breath as well? So doing that in a circle can be so potent. And I really, one of my favorite circles to facilitate in when we hold them are our circles with women, just women. Um, and I think you mentioned before the art of creating such a safe space in a circle and in the FBR circles that we provide, I think how healing it can be seen in a part of yourself that you may not have been able to authentically show before. But if you can be in that beautiful practice of sitting in circle with other women, allow that part to be seen and almost be celebrated, whether it's anger, fear, grief, or laughter, joy, sexuality, but to be celebrated in that. And there's something so healing in being able to be in these safe containers of circle and just be yourself and it be accepted. And I think that speaks to, yeah, why we can go into these deeper truths as women when we're in circle together because it's all welcome.
When we're talking about this idea of authenticity, I think we can't really be in our authenticity if our nervous system's not in its window of regulation. And I think there's something about sitting or lying in circle with other women and noticing how our nervous systems begin to co-regulate
Mm,
that process. And we can witness breath patterns changing to mimic and match, or we can notice emotional expressions that come up for one person that becomes an allowing for another person as well. So the actual process of breathing in circle becomes a way to support each other to come back into authenticity in a way that we don't need to discuss it. Our bodies allow it. It becomes an allowing.
I love that. And what feels very important to speak to there as well is that for some people sitting in circle, whether it's just a women's circle or in mixed containers or just a men's circle for that matter, that feels very safe. Whilst for some people it might not at all.
yeah.
Right. And I think it's important to speak to that because whether it feels safe for you at this point or not, it actually doesn't matter because healing will be available regardless. Because the healing in that sense sits in showing up anyway, coming to the spaces and doing the work. And like back that I love that you spoke to it, it might mean, oh, someone starts to make sound next to me and explore their anger or whatever. And I might notice a response in myself that could be either of comfort, oh yeah, that really encourages me to go into that as well. Or it could be of discomfort because who knows, my mom was very angry as a child, let's say, yeah. So that could create also a lot of discomfort, but
Mm,
whether it creates comfort or discomfort, it's healing because there's an opportunity to witness ourselves in the face of each other. And I think that is really important to bring that nuance. Safety also gets created through meeting ourselves in challenge. And sometimes the space is completely safe, but we feel unsafe in it. And
mm,
there's a nuance and a difference in that. So what I think is important to speak to there is that whether we feel safe or not, there's an opportunity. And in the opportunity, we can find safety and therefore that deeper belonging and therefore deeper authenticity. And the reason I think it's important to speak to that is because there is a little bit of a woke culture moving around, particularly in the West right now, around safety needs to be created by the practitioner. And to a degree, that is true. And I think that is a very important piece. And also, safety is co-created in the space by everyone in it, including the self that is showing up to the space. And because what I'm seeing in it sometimes is a little bit of under responsibility from people. And I guess I'm just naming this as the understanding that we all co-creating the space together and that certain parts of us might feel really safe and welcome and certain parts of us might not. And it is in that recognition that we heal together. And it is in that recognition that we come together and allow each other and ourselves and allow like actually each other and ourselves. And it might also means, yeah, someone might fuck it up, or someone might make you not feel safe sometimes. And that is part of the journey and it is a part of the process. And I think that is this dance of authenticity and belonging. If we can just understand that concept of actually this person said something shit to me and that's their journey and can I actually love them in that as opposed to them needing to change in order to make me feel safe or feel like I belong or feel with whatever it might be, right? So I guess this might be another topic for another conversation, but because what we're exploring here is also responsibility, and to what degree are we responsible for our own emotions, and to what degree is that also created by the space. But there's all these nuances, I think, when we start to explore sitting in circle as a medicine, because it's all of it is medicine, like all of it. Yeah. And that means also the discomfort is a part of that. It's actually a really big part of that. And so there's so much to explore there around sense of safety and where that really comes from as well.
And maybe almost to sort of tie a bow on this conversation, it feels like we've been discussing these practices that really support us to understand our own authenticity and to come home to that sense of self. And I think these practices, like breath work and some of the somatic practices, they create that emotional safety and the conditions. As you said, even if we're not feeling safe in ourselves, it creates a safety in that environment as well, where, yeah, it creates these conditions where our truth and authenticity actually become available to us. And then we can start exploring what it's like to be in authenticity.
Yeah, I love that. And how through these shared spaces, we explore both our own individual belonging to our own selves as well as that of one another, and allowing others to be on that same journey, in whichever way that might look. And that's where we actually find a more, yeah, a more deeper love, I think. Like it's a deeper love of showing up to the spaces, to the practices, and allowing the breath and the body to just take us. And for me, that is like devotion, that's commitment to the practice. And if we can do that, and I find it actually personally quite addictive, it's like once you're in, you're kind of just in. And there's no way out, there's no way back almost. And it's because it becomes so enjoyable to really discover these different parts of ourselves. And I think that the joy of this never ending dance between authenticity and belonging, and the joy of going into ourselves and in these shared spaces and finding that out, that is why I do this work. That's why I love to share it and teach it, and that's why I'm a part of it in such a deep and profound way, because I just enjoy that so much, the process of that. And I hope that these conversations can be a way of sparking that also in the listeners as well, to really
Mm.
to really start to look at themselves and self-work or healing as an enjoyable process. It's a process of reclamation, and in that we encounter many difficult parts of ourselves, because it is not always easy, and we are often confronted with parts of ourselves that we have rejected or denied or hidden or whatever it may be. And at the end of the day, it's the most loving thing that we can possibly do for ourselves and each other. And I guess we found FBR breathwork as a tool to really do that and explore that.
Mm.
Authenticity and belonging aren't opposites. They're two strands of the same thread. We become who we are through connection, honest, courageous, imperfect connection. Our hope is that today invites you to soften the parts of yourself that have been performing, protecting, or fitting in, and to reclaim the woman underneath. Thank you for sitting in this circle with us today. If this conversation opened something in you, share it with a woman you love, because we heal through each other. Thank you so much for tuning in to We Are Woman. I hope today's conversation gave you something to reflect on, to feel into, or to carry with you into the rest of your week. Please make sure to click subscribe on your favourite podcast platform so you never miss the latest episodes as they drop. And if you enjoyed this episode, please share it with a woman that would find it helpful, because this isn't just our podcast, it's all of ours together. You can also follow us on Instagram at We Are Woman Podcast to stay connected, share your thoughts, and join our growing sisterhood. We've got some very special events planned and would love for you to be a part of them. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And thank you for being exactly who you are.